we will be circling back to the issue of the strike action in Nigeria, where the NEC, the NLC, the TUC all came to a consensus, and then eventually, because of an assault against Joe Ajaero, they went back into their strike action. And to join us to have that conversation is Ireoluwa Oguntuase, a labor law expert. Thank you so much, Ireoluwa, for joining us.
Yes, thanks for having me, and good evening.
Good evening to you too. Now, Ireoluwa, the Nigeria Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress have repeatedly suspended nationwide strikes. Several times they've wanted to go on strike. They've hinted on going on strike, even without the government fulfilling their demands in discussion with the federal government. But nothing was done. A lot of times they've called off the strike. So do you believe that at this point, Nigerians will take them serious or even perceive them as credible in future actions?
Okay, thank you once again, and thanks for having me. Now, if we look at the whole situation in this, we'll discover that, like you rightly said, over time, NLC will come out that they want to go on strike, and we'll discover that is not is just by word of mouth only, just verbally. We don't see any seriousness in this. But beyond this, I think we need to focus our gaze on the legitimacy, of this particular one, because since NLC has been going on strike, I think the issues presented in this situation is quite a little bit unique, considering the fact that the reason for the strike is because of the alleged assault of the NLC president. And if we look at the provision of the Trade Dispute Act and the Trade Union Act, we'll see that the provision, particularly Section 48 of the Trade Dispute Act, that defines trade disputes, dispute between employers and workers as a result of employment, non-employment, physical condition of work of any person. Now, strike, again, as defined in the Trade Dispute Act, will mean that deliberate and concerted effort by a group of individuals whereby they refuse to work as a result of trade dispute. So the question in this situation is, was there any trade dispute at all that could have warranted them to go on strike? What is the extent of the legitimacy of this particular strike? And my answer will be that, going by the provision of Section 48 that I cited earlier, I will think that the strike is illegitimate, considering the fact that the basis upon which they could have gone on strike has not arisen. Now, that being said, now the NLC actually went on strike and they called it off almost immediately. I will say that, and I've always told the line that strike is not the best option. Now, NLCs at several times should try as much as possible to negotiate with the federal government. But even beyond negotiating with federal government, now, in a situation whereby they need to go on strike, they should also consider all the appropriate laws that regulate the issue of going on strike. And if we juxtapose the appropriate laws with the circumstances of this case, we will see that it is not enough. It is totally inappropriate for them going on strike on this particular issue. And for me, I think NLC should also be more creative. They need to do more. Strike is not the only option. So they have that responsibility to do more, because the strike in itself is losing its potency. Now, if we look at this particular strike, almost everybody condemned it. And people actually saw it as an attempt to satisfy the interest of only one person, or as an attempt to inflate the ego of only one person. And that is actually bad for the image of the Nigerian Labour Congress. So, in my own humble opinion, I think they could have done better, with
Right,
respect to not even going on strike at all.
right.
Because, yes.
Yeah, I'm glad that you did mention that, because my next question was going to be whether or not it was right for them to go on strike based on the assault, of Joe Ajaero. But despite the labor union's advice that they do not go on strike, they still proceeded, to take the strike action. What is your opinion on that?
Okay, I understand that there was actually a court ruling, specifically an ex parte injunction restraining them from going on strike. And this is very simple. We don't need to, say anything more about it. Section 6 of the 1999 Constitution is clear. We practice a presidential system of government, in which case, we operate the principle of separation of powers. Now, separation of powers, Section 6 vests powers in the judicial arm of government to adjudicate between warring parties. If we look at Section 287 of the 1999 Constitution as amended, it is also very clear as to the fact that all judgment of the court must be obeyed. So if we look at this situation and we agree that there was actually a court order that the National Industrial Court issued restraining NLC from proceeding on strike, then the question is now that, is it not even criminal for them, going on strike by flouting the order of the court? The law is very clear. Is contempt ex facipure, contempt out of courts. We have a responsibility to obey the courts. And NLC, like I've always said, they are institutions created by law. And to the extent in which they're institutions created by law, then they have a responsibility to a superior institution equally created by law. In this situation, the National Industrial Court is an institution specifically created by virtue of the Third Arbitration Act, Section 254C, to adjudicate on the disputes between employer and employee, and also to adjudicate on trade disputes and the legitimacy of the strike. So the question is, given the exclusive jurisdiction of the National Industrial Court, Section 7 of the National Industrial Court Act, Section 19 of the National Industrial Court Act, 2006, it makes it glaringly clear that the strike that NLC went on, considering the subsistence of the judgment of the ruling of the National Industrial Court, totally inappropriate, is illegitimate, and is even contemptuous. It's contemptuous.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much, Ireoluwa Oguntuase, labor law expert, for joining us to discuss the strike action. Thanks a lot once again for your time on the news.
Yeah.